Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening there. This is Dave Domzalski. I am your host and the founder of the Financial Bin. This is Financial Bin Radio. I'm really glad that you're joining us tonight. We have PROskore CEO Bill Jula. A little shameless promotion before we get started here. As many of you may know, we just released our first book about a month ago at this point, November 3rd. It is called Entrepreneur Intervention, Triumphs and Failures of Entrepreneurs. It is a compilation of 28 stories from, I got to tell you, some of the most remarkable individuals I've had the pleasure to interact with and meet. They detail their triumphs and failures as they tell you about, everything they did to start their business and continue to grow their business. So you can pick that book up. It's available at Amazon and CreateSpace. For CreateSpace, you have to make your own account there. And I'm sure most of you probably have an Amazon account. Also, it is available in ebook form for Amazon Kindle and Barnes & Noble Nook. Probably in the next couple of weeks, definitely by the end of the year, we will have it in the iBook store for Apple and Sony Reader. So I want to thank you for joining us tonight. And I believe we have Bill on the line. Bill, are you there? Can you give us a background on what you were doing prior to starting PROskore?
Sure. Prior to PROskore, how far do you want me to go back?
Well, were you always entrepreneurial, or were you kind of working a day job, that type of thing?
Sure. Yeah. I've over probably the past 10, 12 years, I've kind of gone between, entrepreneurial things and day job style things. But at the core of who I am, even during those day job things I was doing, I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. So whether I was actually doing it at any moment in time or not, from day one, I've always known I was an entrepreneur. Part of that is as an entrepreneur, you always kind of know, you have a difficult time working for other people sometimes, and I think that's one of those things that I think at an early stage, even as early as age 15, when I probably had my first part-time job. Not that I can't take orders, but if they're not good orders, I have a harder time with that. So I'd rather give them and come up with something on my own.
I can completely relate. Believe me, I juggle the work with the Financial Bin. It's kind of my part-time job right now as I work my day job. So I know exactly how you feel.
Yeah. It's one of those things. I think you know it inherently if that's what you are, and whether you're working a day job or not, if you're dabbling with other things on the side, then that's a big warning sign right there that you're definitely an entrepreneur. So.
Absolutely. My next question is, when did you guys launch? When did PROskore launch?
Yeah, so we launched October of this year.
Okay.
We grew out of an existing online business network that I had started 5 years prior. But what we did was we kind of, in late September, kind of retooled what we were doing, rebranded it, took a look at some of the things that were happening in the marketplace with regards to, social measurement and scoring people and making that work within an online business networking context, and basically rebranded, relaunched ourselves as PROskore in early October.
Wow. Okay. So, and now, how are you guys different than, would you say, maybe a Clout or a LinkedIn, or I think there's another one out there called Peer Index? How do you guys differentiate yourselves?
Sure. A lot of different ways, on a lot of different levels from all of those. So I'll start with Clout.
Sure.
Kind of the biggest difference I would say between us and Clout is kind of a good way to describe it would be if you were to look at, the difference between Facebook and LinkedIn. One sort of got this social, gaming, fun element to it, and the other one's a little more buttoned up, a little more serious, So that's how I would describe us compared to a Clout. They measure social influence. They're really interested in sort of, a lot of the noise you're creating out there and things you're doing on a sort of a social level more than necessarily a professional level.
Sure.
Whereas we're looking at probably a bigger bigger vision, deeper look into yourself as a professional, and we measure professional reputation. Social influence is like one part of that, but we then go a little deeper and look at your professional background, recommendations you're receiving in the workplace, that kind of a thing, to come up with a different score. Ironically enough, cloud is actually a small component of our actual scoring system, so that you kind of put it in perspective. And then beyond that, though, even more importantly than just the differences in the scoring and what we're doing is kind of the nature of our business model. With PROskore, the idea is that you're using your score in the context of our online business community, and that score becomes relevant when you're trying to connect to other people and look for new leads and new business opportunities. So we like to tell people, with cloud, your score sort of belongs to advertisers. It's a nice way for advertisers to find influencers and sell you stuff. On PROskore, it's really more about the score being your own and using your score to your advantage, where you then kind of become the advertiser for your business, and you kind of leverage it that way. Biggest difference, I'd say, between PROskore and like a LinkedIn, if you think about like your LinkedIn profile, it's really your resume.
Right.
You've got a lot of your work history on there. PROskore, it's really more about your company than just your resume, although you can, throw your resume in there. You can import your LinkedIn and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But it's really designed and built more for, people that are looking to sell, people that are marketers, small business owners, sales professionals.
Gotcha.
LinkedIn's obviously used very heavily on a recruitment side or more of a career side, whereas we're more, not necessarily for the guy out there looking for a job, but more for the guy looking for, new business opportunities, new ways to sell.
Gotcha.
And the profiles, if you kind of put the profiles side by side, you'll see a huge difference. Ours is more a pitch about your business with a lot of interactivity, a lot of, things linking out to a lot of other social media tools, whereas LinkedIn's like, a little more straightforward with regards to your professional background. And then the other obvious difference there is, they don't score, and we do. We have a whole scoring system, right, and a lead matching system and things like that. So as far as the others you mentioned, like Peer Index and those, to be honest, I've dipped into those a little bit and looked at them. I think most of those others are sort of playing in that clout world more so than the professional side like we are.
That's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably be a little naive to even comment on some of them, but, there's definitely a big difference. I think it's, like I said, it's sort of like, going back to 2004 and looking at, how Facebook and LinkedIn kind of went their own ways. I'd say that's sort of how you could probably look at us in clout.
Okay. So to kind of maybe to get back to what you were saying about, how I guess how I'm taking it, I think it's PROskore is kind of more for, would you say, business to business rather than, I don't know, maybe a business to consumer where, you're not going to have maybe an HR person going on PROskore to kind of determine, maybe alongside with looking at someone's resume or LinkedIn account to determine if someone's a good fit for a company. You're talking more, just for an opportunity, for me, maybe for an opportunity, how I compare to other people in my area, and then see who I can do business with. Basically, do I have that correct?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's the intent of the system now, and that's sort of the goal and what we're pushing. That's who we're attracting. Is more of the B2B side of things. I kind of look at us like, it's kind of like a virtual chamber of commerce, where you've got all these people all doing business, whether they're attorneys or accountants or web designers or marketers or what have you, and they're all trying to connect. And what we're doing is in an online way, making that experience more efficient online, and the scoring helps create a ranking system, which creates a hierarchy, which channels leads to people. So it's just a 21st century way of taking, every chamber of commerce in the world and every leads organization in the world and throwing them online and making it actually work effectively.
You should trademark that virtual chamber of commerce. That should be your tagline.
Yeah. Well, chambers of commerce is actually, I don't know. They seem to be kind of a dying breed these days. Part of that could be, a lot of what we're doing. There's so much efficiency and so much convenience around doing things online now, and so much more effectiveness.
Absolutely.
I mean, not to get away from the real world handshake or anything like that by any means, but this younger generation coming up, I mean, this is the expectation as far as networking is concerned, and that idea of just getting up in the morning and going to a coffee and seeing those same 10 people all the time and networking and stuff. Those days are, limited, or not necessarily limited, but they need to change a little bit. So
right, or
but
they
you're
would
right, yeah,
start online and then would get, they'd start online with PROskore with a meetup, and then they would, transform into meeting up later on in real life.
Exactly, yeah. And there's some, I don't want to get your head spinning too much or anything, but there's a whole lot of angles we've thought about going with these things. When you start to then, you take the score into account and the fact that we have a lot of information about what you need and what other people need. You get those people in a room and you start throwing some location kind of networking kind of stuff into there with the mobile devices, and you can create a pretty dynamic and interesting type of an event with a lot of technology there. So a lot of ways things can go. The key is the platform and the data that you capture, and that's we're at that stage now where we're just trying to grow, and then a lot of fun things will start to develop.
Well, I got to say, I was, when you reached out and said you would like to be interviewed, I kind of, I messed around with the program a little bit, and I was happy to see that I'm my PROskore is 56.
Oh, good. That's good. Yeah.
So I guess it's above average from what I was reading.
Yeah, I think the average right now, we actually added a new little PROskore Labs section of the site where we kind of post some infographics about some of the data we're analyzing, and you can now actually hover over a map on our site and take a look at the average for the state that you're in. And I think collectively over the entire network, the average is somewhere in like the mid-20s or something. So, yeah, at 55, 56, you're doing pretty well.
Nice. Very nice. It's good to know.
Yeah.
You kind of touched on it briefly, but maybe if you want to go into a little more in depth. So what are your plans for expansion? Where do you see it going?
So I think, as far as expansion, there's some like strategic business development things that we have an opportunity to pursue. But I think overall, the expansion really at this point for us is just growth and getting people to adopt the platform and, creating profiles and just growing this user base. The more density we can create and the more mind share we can create in people's minds in local markets all around the world, the more effective our platform is going to continue to be. There's certain markets where we have thousands of people in a city using the system, and then there's some of those maybe more rural markets where you're in the hundreds. So the effectiveness of our platform in terms of matching people up and generating leads for people starts to improve the denser a population gets within a certain city on our site. So for us, the immediate kind of the short-term immediate plans over the next 6 to 12 months is really start to ramp up our user base and get that as big as possible. Beyond that, there's opportunities to, obviously like develop. We're working on our API to where, other platforms could then pull data from PROskore and leverage our scores and some of our profiles and things like that within their systems. There's opportunities. We've already had some interest, but there's probably a lot of opportunities out there with a lot of different business organizations and associations that want to tap into us and potentially white label some of what we're doing. So those are a little bit more, more on the development side. But right now we're focused on growth, just everything we can do to get more users in the system.
That sounds great. It sounds like a perfect plan, at least for the next year and a half, 2 years. That's great. Yeah. Next few questions I have are kind of more just general about entrepreneurship. Would you mind, whatever comes to mind, what is entrepreneurship to you? You say you have an entrepreneurial background.
Yeah, it's really, I hate to sound cliche-ish, but it's really, standing on the edge of that cliff and looking over and not knowing what the heck's coming next and, jumping and hoping you land right. You know what I mean?
Right.
That's really what it is. It's being a risk taker. It's, not knowing where the next dollar's coming from, but having a belief in yourself and, sometimes a belief in your idea and going with it, and not really worrying about, falling down. And if you do, it's the idea of getting back up and trying again, So, when I think of entrepreneurship, that's what I think of is the, the risk, and it takes a special person to do it.
Now, in your opinion, because I kind of go back and forth about this next question. Some people have their opinions, and I just kind of want to know what yours is. Do you think entrepreneurs are born or are they made? What do you think?
I definitely think they're born. I think there's just a quality in people that certain people are willing to take that risk. Some people have the capacity to take the risk, and others, others don't.
Right.
So I'd say most people, it's a born thing. Now of that, there's different ranges. There's people that are willing to jump off that 5,000-foot cliff, and there's some people willing to jump off a 50-foot, ledge. There's a big difference in what
right.
people are willing to do. But I've known some people in the past where they've lost their 9-to-5 jobs, and I've sort of thrown opportunities with some things that I'm doing out there to them, and just to kind of see if they hook onto it and see the potential and take advantage of the opportunity. And I've for as many people that have grabbed onto that opportunity, I've seen just as many not understand it or not get it and go right back into that 9-to-5. And then what ends up happening is 6 months later, they're right back there again. They get laid off or something changes, and they're just constantly in that cycle, but they can't get out of it enough to take that risk. So I think you're born with it. I really do.
No, absolutely, I agree, and it's tough seeing those kinds of people that they just can't find that whatever makes them happy. It's not a job, but it's also they're too frightened to really, put themselves into it because maybe it's a fear of failure or, who knows. But, yeah, it's tough to see people in that constant cycle.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just having a, particularly in this, the kind of the social media, the internet world, software, that kind of thing, it's really having a creative mind, too. Sure. You kind of have to be able to think outside the box, think quick, get creative, so that goes hand in hand. And I think a while ago I might have said to you, having financial resources, might give you an advantage. Even if you're not truly an entrepreneur, you can make it happen. But even there, I've seen people that have money and they try to do things and they're just not able to do it. They just don't have that capacity. So
exactly,
takes a different kind of brain, I think. Yeah.
Well, there's something to be said for bootstrapping a business too, I think. So, but I definitely hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, the last question I have for you, Bill, is what's one thing you kind of touched on what you guys have done at PROskore. You kind of touched on just general entrepreneurship. What's one thing you can pass on to aspiring entrepreneurs? Maybe one mistake that you wish you would have known about, or one success that you really went at something and it really paid off for you. What do you think?
I think the one thing over the 10 plus years that I've been an entrepreneur and doing different things, or even when I haven't necessarily been the entrepreneur but been involved in startups, is this idea of a product never is. You're never going to have a product that's 100% ready to go live with or ready to launch. You're always going to be able to find a problem with it, or you're going to be able to add more features or do things like that. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen people just sit on ideas and sit on product without going live because they just never feel like it's ready. There's an apprehension there, and they end up missing the boat. And so I think my advice would be, if you've got an idea and you get it, 75% of the way completed, go live with it. Get it out there in the wild, get people using it, and from that you'll actually learn a whole lot more about what you need to do next, as opposed to sitting there thinking what that product should be or what the public wants. And then trying to get it right 100% of the way before putting it out there. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so I think just trust in your gut, knowing it's good enough, get it out there and start getting some feedback. And then, that's the other thing. Once you go with it, you're out there. Now it really forces you to take even more risk and to make sure it works, But if you just sit back and wait, I've seen a lot of people just sit on ideas and they never they talk about it over and over and over again. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and then they just don't, So
they try to perfect it, and they never get anything done, and it ends up being a failure by not doing anything.
Whether they're trying to perfect it, physically with the product, or whether they're just trying to perfect it even in their minds to even make the step to go do it. It's kind of the same issue there. So, my advice would be just get out there and do it, and take the lumps. Even with PROskore, we went live, in October, and we got some initial press that, we weren't necessarily even ready for. We had TechCrunch cover us within the first week and a half. We had Mashable cover us the following week, and the product wasn't totally done, you know. And I remember getting on a phone conversation with Robert Scoble, and you know, he had been in there and he played around with it a little bit, and you know, at that moment the product was probably 50% of what it even is today, which is a month and a half later. But we learned a lot immediately, you know, and so yeah, don't be afraid to go live. That'd be my advice.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess, you know, maybe you take that and also say that, you know, hey, I mean, you heard from the consumer base at least a little bit, so it allowed you guys to at least you know, take those lumps in early on, but then you know refine the product and make it better for things that people are asking for, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, and sometimes that helps your team start to understand. You know, you can have meetings all day long about how you should be revising this product and make it work this way, and you know, your team will look at you and think, nah, you don't know what you're talking about. But then when they start to see the customers coming back with those same suggestions, you know,
right.
Now there's proof, right? So now everybody's got buy-in, everybody's going to make those changes. So just get out there and do it.
Get out there and do it. I couldn't agree
like
more.
Nike.
That's exactly what I was thinking about. Well, Bill, I really appreciate your time, and I thank you for really giving us some good insight.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Dave. Appreciate it.
No problem. Take care.
Bye-bye.